family. There's some seats available and some maybe even some blankets to help keep you a little bit warm.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Friends, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Richard David Rubin. If you have a cell phone or a pager, I would ask for you to please take a moment to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Rabbi Jessica Lott from the Northwestern Hills.
Do you have the ribbon? Did you already get it? Oh, she's okay.
It's customary to rend your clothes when someone, back in the day, people used to actually tear, not some traditional people also tear a garment, wear a torn garment. You could rip this jacket, I don't care. What we do in place of that. This jacket, it would not be a problem. I don't wear it again, believe me. But in more contemporary times, we've upgraded to let you sort of do this with a ribbon. Sort of shows that we're in sort of outward showing that we're in distress. Sort of shows on the outside.
If you have a seat, you can be seated, and if you would like to sit, we have a couple more seats, if that's more comfortable for you. So the Hebrew word for funeral is levaya, which actually means accompaniment. Both in life and in death, being alone is one of the things that we fear the most. And so we gather here now so that Richard is not alone, right? We accompany Richard Rubin to his final resting place on earth. We come together also so we are not left alone in our mourning. You, the family, friends, and community begin to plant the seeds of memory. And those seeds are watered by the tears that we shed as we think of our loss. A reading from Ecclesiastes. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which has been planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to rend, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. A selection from the Psalms. Adonai ma'adam vateda'ehu, ben enosh vatchashvehu, adam level dama, yamav ketzel over, baboker yatzitz v'chalaf, la'erev yamolel ve'avesh, tashev enosh adaka, Vatomar Shuvu Bnei Adam. Almighty One, what are human beings that you take note of them? The children of humanity that you should think of them? A human being is like a momentary breeze. A person's days are but a passing shadow. At dawn, life blossoms and renews itself. At dusk, it withers and dries up. You return a person unto dust. You say, return, O children of humanity. I'll recite Psalm 23, and then we'll read it together in English. It's in your booklets on the inside, but first I'll sing it in Hebrew. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binot dashe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yanaleni, nafshi eshovev, nafshi eshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begets al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha, shiftecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, neged zorai, dishanta b'shemen roshi, dishanta b'shemen roshi, dishanta b'shemen roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed, yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now we'll hear from a few. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. That's okay. We've recited some psalms and prayers, and now we'll hear from a few of Richard's closest people. First from his cousin Don, then from his sister Dale, and then from his lifelong companion Angie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Being a lawyer by trade, it's hard for me to keep anything down to 5 minutes, but I'm going to do the best I can. I think we all knew Rich well enough to know the pain and difficulties he experienced during most of his adult life. But why bother repeating the story of a life we are all too familiar with? So I'm not gonna. When Rich was young, his whole life was filled with baseball, practice, games, tournaments. He lived to be on a baseball field. He was just a natural athlete. He also played football and basketball, and he was good at them, but he lived to be on a diamond. My brother and I also played baseball and football, and we were good, but we never played with his passion, which carried over to whatever he was doing. That is the Richard I want to remember, not the guy who fought battles with his health for more than 40 years, and won many of them before they finally brought him to this day. As we were talking with family and friends the past few days, what came through from everyone was how much they enjoyed Rich's incredible sense of humor. It wasn't a loud and verbose sense of humor. It was the kind that snuck up on you. The dry, sarcastic kind he would lay on you and then wait for you to catch on. He would have this twinkle in his eye while he watched for your reaction. That is the Richard I want to remember. I want to remember the Richard I knew when we were young, when we were just looking forward to the next game. I want to remember the Sunday afternoon spent with the extended family in the basement of Rich's home in Skokie, which led to a lot of laughter and making fun of his dad, who hit the grill dressed like a master chef, which unfortunately he wasn't. Not that it mattered to us. I do want to dwell a little on why we're all here today. We all know that Rich went through during his life, but we are here to celebrate the life of a friend and relative who was part of all of our lives, a guy able to give us joy in spite of all his struggles. I want to express my gratitude to his sister Dale and to Angie, that special person in his life who stood with Richard through the best and worst times of his life. I want to thank my wife Barbara, who accompanied Rich to so many of his doctor's appointments to ensure he understood and followed the doctor's instructions and the medication regimen he had to follow to stay alive. I also want to thank his friend Margaret, who spent many days helping Rich with tasks he couldn't do by himself. She just didn't work for Rich as an employee. She worked and cared for him as a true friend. Time does not permit me to thank all who were important parts of Rich's life, but know that he appreciated your love, friendship, and support. That is why I want to remember this, how I want to remember Rich. Goodbye, our friend.
I came into Richard's life when I married Don, which I considered one of the bonuses of my marriage. Because I'm rather feisty myself, I always admired that trait in others, so I was not intimidated by Richard's combativeness. Even though we often butted heads, I became Richard's Uber driver and note-taker for his many doctor appointments. We bonded over our mutual love of hospital cafeteria macaroni and cheese, which was always how we ended our many doctor visits. I was determined to find a doctor who could surgically remove Richard's AVM after so many doctors we went to either refused to do it or even refused to see him. I finally found Dr. Bajer at Northwestern, who met with Richard and agreed to do the surgery, spelling out the potential consequences of it, as well as the dangers of his frequent seizures, which Rich had. Rich made the tough decision to have the surgery, a perfect example of Richard's determination and courage to fight for an independent life. That mindset was sometimes frustrating for all of us in Richard's orbit, but worked well for him to cope with all the challenges he faced daily. I love Richard's acerbic sense of humor, which he never lost, no matter how sick he was. And I think he was the most courageous person I ever met, who faced adversity with toughness and true grit. I will miss having him in my life, but I will hold him up as an example of how to move forward through life's challenges. Thanks, Richard, for teaching me how to really live a life so wonderfully. I just want to read something. It's called Missing You Always. You never said I'm leaving. You never said goodbye. You were gone before we knew it, and only God knows why. In life, I loved you dearly. In death, I love you still. In my heart, I hold a place that only you can fill. It broke my heart to love you, but you didn't go alone. A part of me went with you the day God took you home. I'm gonna miss my best friend. I'm gonna miss him so much. I've known him for 46 years. I love you, Richard. I love you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm glad that Don was able to kind of tell you a little bit about our childhood, because I couldn't have done it. My dear bro, Rich, you will always be in my heart. Our parents would have been proud to know we remained close and talked several times every day. We could talk about anything and everything, but sports by far was the best subject. Your favorite teams, the Cubs and Bears, that you watched even though we often talked they were frustrating at best. Rich was my hero. He experienced a life filled with healthcare challenges more than any one person should have to endure. But he fought to stay independent with a good sense of humor. It is so very hard to lose him. He meant so much to me. He is with me in my memories and in my broken heart. I find happiness in knowing that he will live on in all of you in your memories. You are my brother and my friend. I will love you always. Richard Rubin died on the first night of Hanukkah. And this week, Jews all around the world are kindling lights to remember a miracle. When the temple was destroyed, we are taught, there was only enough oil for 1 day's light. And yet, that small amount of oil lasted for 8 nights. And when the Maccabees assembled, a tiny family against an empire's army, everyone thought that they would be destroyed. And yet, they were the winners. When our ancestors experienced those things, they called that a miracle. Richard's life was also something of a miracle. He was born in Chicago in 1956 and grew up in Skokie in the loving home of his parents, who are buried right here, Corky and Marilyn of blessed memory, and his sister Dale, and a close-knit community of cousins who lived nearby. Sunday nights were for big family dinners with everyone together, playing baseball, telling stories, dreaming up road trips to Florida on a Greyhound bus that would never happen. Richard was an incredible athlete, playing football and basketball and, most importantly, Little League, with his father at the helm of the team and the whole family cheering from the stands at every game. After attending Niles East High School, Richard began a career as a hairdresser. But when he was 23, his hands started failing him, and he found that he was living with an AVM. They write this rare, dangerous malformation that occurs in less than 1% of people, and he learned that the fact that he was alive was a miracle already. And much like the oil of Hanukkah, Richard outlasted everyone's predictions. As everyone here knows, he didn't just make it to the miraculous age of 23. He lived 43 years beyond that, and he spent most of that time defying expectations. When his career as a hairdresser came to an abrupt end, he found a new career as a car salesman, and he was enormously successful. When many other people faced with illness after debilitating illness would have given up, Richard soldiered on, facing each prognosis with a defiant independence and a biting sense of humor, like he was facing an entire empire. Against all odds, Richard could see, talk, walk, drive, travel, and live. These are things that most of us take for granted, but Richard fought for each and every one of these miracles. He found dignity in his independence and in his ability to take great care to keep his home fastidiously clean and his appearance meticulous. Richard was able to miraculously make life work with the support of his sister from afar and with help locally from his cousin Don and his wife Barb, and the extraordinary dedication of his aide Margaret, and Richard had Angie. As friends, and then spouses, and then when the light of their marriage went out, they became lifelong friends again. They talked multiple times a day, or whether they were taking trips to Las Vegas or Mexico, they were loving companions for his whole life. Richard and Angie faced all the hard stuff with grace and with a longevity that no one might have predicted. Perhaps it was the mix of hardship and determination that made Richard so funny. Barb yesterday called his a wicked sense of humor. And though he wasn't always the easiest person to get along with, he was a loyal friend and a dedicated member of his community. He sat on the condo board, he volunteered at Evanston Hospital, he stayed in touch with friends from high school, and in perhaps the greatest demonstration of loyalty and in his own belief in miracles, Richard was a lifelong Cubs fan. As Dale remarked, he was the most courageous person I've ever met. I don't know anyone who would have lived through what he lived through without giving up a long time ago. So today, as we lay him to rest, we light the Hanukkah candles and we light a memorial candle. And we remember that the miracle of our ancestors who outlasted their enemies, who made their own miracle in having the faith and courage to light a lamp that everyone told them wouldn't last. So too with Richard Rubin, who outlived all expectations, whose life was a miracle of his own making, and whose memory will always be a blessing. A moment of silent remembrance for Richard. invite you to stand for the memorial prayer. If you're able, you can stay seated if you need. El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamtze menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'malot kedoshim utehorim, kezor harakia mazhirim, et nishmat David ben Shalom shalach leolamo. Ana bal harachamim yastirehu beseter knafav leolamim. Bitzror hachayim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. Vayanuach bashalom al mishkavo. Venomar Amen. God filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your presence, amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating the brilliance of the skies, to the soul of David ben Shalom, Richard David Rubin, who has gone to his eternal place of rest. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter him beneath your wings eternally, and bind his soul among the living, that he may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, v'hi shem Adonai v'morach. God gave, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem b'cholomo, v'zan v'chilkel etchem b'tuvo, v'yimit etchem b'tzdi, v'natah b'tochem chayei olam. Baruch atah Adonai dayan u'mesh. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai Rav Mashiach, Hail Chaim Chesed, Chayei hakol b'rachamim rabim, Samech nafim b'rachamim v'tirosim, Mekayenu v'nater shebei afar, V'chamocha ba'alpim v'timidim, Melech v'mitim chayim v'shmo. Baruch atah Adonai, Matea Tochenu Chayei Olam. Now we turn back to your booklets and we'll recite the Mourner's Kaddish on the back. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Ba'alma divra chirute v'amlich malchute, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehe Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam U'almei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Vit Hadar, Vit Ale, Vit Halal, Shmeid Kudsha, Brichu, Le'ela, Min Kol Birchata Vashirata, Tushbechata Venechamata, Da'amiran Ba'alma V'imru, Amen. Yehe Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Friends, in just a few moments, once the cemetery staff has had the chance to set the vault in place and remove the rest of the equipment, we'll begin by inviting the members of the immediate family to come forward and participate in the burial. There'll be some earth in the little buckets that you can use with a little spade. This is considered one of the highest forms of a mitzvah, of a good deed or of a commandment, because it's something that we do for somebody that they can't repay us, they can't say thank you, and we're doing this, and it's considered this chesed shel emet, a pure and true form of kindness. Some people have the tradition that you take 3 shovels and you take 3 little scoops, and that's considered that full intent that you've participated in it, and then you can place the little scoop back into the earth so that each person can take upon that responsibility if they choose to do so for themselves. Use either one, and you can use them at the same time.
Richard's friend Sue. Sue, I guess. Susan. Oh, thanks, Sue.
I have this. I have one in here. I'm gonna. Yes. I'm just gonna. So one thing. As we're.
Friends, again, if there's anybody else that wants to come forward to participate in the burial, we would ask and encourage you to do so at this point. Also, as a reminder, the family will be together at the Rubin residence at 806 Broadview in Highland Park. They'll be together until 9 p.m. as they leave here from the cemetery. Also, the family has requested that any memorial contributions in Richard's memory to be made to the Ark, and that information is on the service.
I'll just also encourage folks the traditional. What are you supposed to say? We never know what to say to someone when they have lost someone very close to them.
Thank you so much for coming.
But Judaism provides an answer for us. And what we are supposed to say is actually on the booklets that you received. We say, Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. Or, I do a shorter version. Personally, I just say, Hamakom yenachem etchem. And it means, may God comfort you. May God comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. So that's sort of the appropriate greeting for the primary mourners is Hamakom yenachem etchem. May God bring you comfort. And go Cats.
Again, friends, this does conclude the service. If you want to stay to witness the cemetery staff complete the task of filling the grave, you certainly may do so, or you certainly may return to the warmth of your car.
Yes, I am going to the warmth of my car.
I say to the outside. A garbage can in the Zion Center, and I always
That's the rabbi question. I just know what to
love to.
There's somebody out there.
Right on here? I got mine. Thank you. Got it, 493. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can do it. Michelle, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, all right. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Nat, I'm gonna follow my dad's grave. So